Greetings. Well, it's been a hell of a year for me for my small machines. The chainsaws. Well, this one was given to me by my father-in-law. Super sweet little 011 Stihl AVT. It's probably as old as I am, and it needed a lot of work. But the main thing that I've had to work on with all my machines this year is this little jobber right there. It's a carburetor for a two-stroke engine, and my word, it gets so frustrating. With a failure to start, it's always either the carburetor or a spark plug, and sometimes it's a little bit more. But we'll get into it. I'll show you what I did with this. I unfortunately didn't take any videos of it because I don't know what I'm doing, but by trial and error, I figured it out eventually. Let's get into it. Well, the first thing with this saw here is I wasn't getting any spark out of the spark plug, and I couldn't figure it out. It took me forever and ever, probably 2 days of just going through the saw, tearing it apart, opening it up, looking around, and eventually I came up with something similar to this. This is an ignition coil, and if you see, this one has a broken spot in it, so it wasn't putting any spark through the spark plug. So I took it out. I ordered a new one, which wasn't exactly plug and play, because this is I mean, it's so old they don't make parts for it anymore. So I took it out, and you just I had to cut the wire, take off the plug, put the plug back on, crimp it, and all that other good stuff, and put it in, and voila! My plugs weren't bad. It was the coil, so now it would get spark, but it wouldn't start still. It just wouldn't fire up, wouldn't fire up, wouldn't fire up. So I ended up having to tear the whole thing apart again, and came up with this as the problem. This isn't the one that came out of this machine. This came out of my weed eater, but it's the same simple concept. I mean, they have a high and low. They have an idle. Let's see I don't know which one's high, which one's low on this one. But I know this one cost $12 to replace. This one, for this machine, you can't just buy a replacement. You have to buy a rebuild kit, because it's like at least 30 to 40 years old, and they just don't make it anymore. So I had to rebuild it, and now I'm going to show you what I did, kind of, using this as an example. Alright, now I know what you're thinking. It's a daunting task. Believe me, it was daunting for me as well. But, whoops, that's the wrong piece here. But since I couldn't find a rebuild, I couldn't find a new carburetor, I mean, there was just no other option. It was either that or don't fix the saw. I couldn't even find a chainsaw shop that would repair this that was local. I mean, I could find plenty of guys that could fix this up in a heartbeat that weren't local, but around here it just wasn't an option. So all I'm doing is taking these out. You can't hurt this. I mean, if it's already broken, you can't break it anymore. Well, you can, but you shouldn't be afraid to look it over. So all I did was to take out the back piece. Other one, I had to use my handy dandy shop knife as well. What I'm just doing is just going to put this right down in there. There you go. It comes right out. And there we go. That's what we're looking for right there. That still looks pretty good on this. It's still flexible. And then right here, there's that pin. I wanted to make sure that was still moving. That was still moving. So, let's see that pin there. Yeah, everything's still moving and functional here. So what I did is take some spray, spray it out, put it back together. Alright. Put it back together. This is a little bit different than the old carburetor that I use. Put that, and you put the screws back in, and then I went to the other side. Alright, next thing to do is just take off the bulb. Make sure that bulb is nice and clean and there's no junk in there. Because the carburetor for that old saw had a bunch of junk in a screen inside of it, and it wasn't allowing fuel to flow through. So I'm taking it out, and this one has a very much similar problem. A bunch of junk right down in here where there's a screen. So what I'm going to do is take this, spray it out. There you go. That screen is now clean, and I can just put this right back together, and we should be good to go. I forgot to mention that it's imperative that you have a gasket to replace the gasket that goes between your carburetor and the engine itself, right? That way you don't get any air leaks. If you have an air leak, it's no good. The engine won't run well, it'll stall out, or it won't start at all. I found that out the hard way because this didn't have that gasket initially. Someone who knows how long ago tore it apart. I know this hasn't been running in 10, 15, 20 years. So the last person to service it failed to put a replacement gasket in, and it just wouldn't start. So, well, it wouldn't start, so they stopped using it. And then the fuel, there's only a little teeny tiny bit of fuel in it, and that was enough to clog up some of the carburetor. So that's how I ended up cleaning it. All the pulling must have pushed the nastiness right into that filter that I showed you on this carburetor. Anyway, I'm done rambling for the day. Have a good day, and don't be afraid to take things apart. I mean, what the hell? It was already broken anyway. Take it easy.